Yeah. Well, so their ranks are different. Like they don't have like the stars or whatever that we have. They it's a little bit different. But I didn't know I was talking to a Hungarian general, and
Welcome to How I Embraced the Suck, a podcast where you get to hear from veterans what life in the military is really like. I am your host, Walt, and before we start, you should know that I do not censor the show in any way. You have been warned. Well, great. Well, today we got Derek from the old New Hampshire, state of New Hampshire. National Guard. What's up, Derek?
how's it going? Thanks
Yeah.
for having me on.
No, I appreciate you coming on. That's the show would not exist without guests. So, quite literally. So I appreciate it. But yeah, what's kind of your background? Why you joined the military, etc.
Yeah, so I joined the New Hampshire Army National Guard in 2016. Right out of high school, I was still in high school actually. I was 17 years old. Um, kind of joined out of a sense of duty, almost. Like I felt like if I could serve, I should serve. You know, I had like this huge sense of patriotism, right? That I need to serve my country, serve my community especially. That's why I decided to go with the New Hampshire Guard. You know, I wanted to be there for like snowstorms and stuff like that because that's what we got up here in the Northeast. We get tons of snowstorms rolling in. You know, flooding. We had a massive flood in 2006, Mother's Day flood. I remember my town, it blew out a dam, and we had the National Guard come in and help out and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, just sense of community, sense of duty, help protect the people around me.
Yeah, I just was thinking, because like the dam going out, Army Corps of Engineers, do they have a National Guard component, or is that just regular Army?
There is a engineer component in the New Hampshire Guard.
Okay.
Yeah,
Huh. Yeah. Yeah. You always hear about that, like uh, the National Guard in like that's seems to be the traditional use form is like a local emergency, just providing whether it be like uh, just a guy standing there with a gun or whatever they do. Seems like before GWAT, it was more of a very local thing.
yeah.
But
I mean,
I
that's
don't
kind
know.
of what it was meant to be. It was a very
Yeah,
local thing.
yeah, huh, yeah. So yeah, so 17. That's definitely that's probably less common than I don't know. I think it's not very common, but I know it's doable. Did you have to get a waiver or anything, or what was the
Yeah, parents had to sign a waiver.
okay?
Yeah.
But the recruiter was like, yeah, come on in.
Yeah, it's actually pretty common.
Okay,
So a lot of times, especially with National Guard, this is probably bigger with National Guard. You do what's called split ops.
okay,
So you could do it your junior year if you're 17 junior year. Basically go through what's called the recruit sustainment program with National Guards.
hmm,
So it's basically basic training, right? They've got drill sergeants there. You go 1 week in a month like you would for a drill, but you'd be going to this recruit sustainment program, and you get yelled at, screamed at, do push-ups, just like you would at basic training. Uh, we had a firing range, so we do some of that stuff. They had a shoot house with like paintball. You could go do that stuff. Humvee rollover simulator there, so you get
hmm,
pretty in depth with the stuff that you would experience in basic training. The only thing that you probably wouldn't would be like the gas chamber, but actually they're working on getting one of those at the RSP in New Hampshire.
okay,
Um, and you'd basically do that while you're in high school, junior year, and then between your your junior and your senior year, you'd go to basic training in the summer. You go do the whole thing, and you come back your senior year, um, continue through the recruit sustainment program, You'd be so there would be like different platoons. So like first and second platoon would be like so like first platoon would be like your first weekend at the recruit sustainment program. Second platoon would be your second month there, and then third platoon would pretty much be any month afterwards. So once you're kind of in
Okay.
the system, but still haven't gone to basic training. And then the fourth platoon would be if you've already done your basic training, so you're just waiting to go to your AIT.
Sure.
And then you go to your AIT after you graduate high school.
Right. Right. Huh. Yeah. It sounds. I mean, almost sounds like a fair style atmosphere. Like when you go to the fair and there's like the recruiters. It's just from you describing. It's like, oh, there's this, and you can go do this, and but it's probably a little more high pressure than that.
Oh, it was just like basic training, like two
Okay.
days of basic training. That's what it
Gotcha.
was.
Okay.
They didn't hold back either. I mean, they had drill sergeants there who went to drill sergeant school. They knew how to run things.
Okay. Huh. So was that like I guess you can't compare it to what was that like just, 2 days of intense military environment and atmosphere and then back to civilian life. What was the transition like for that?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad, really. I
Yeah.
mean, you knew it's just like drill. It was you knew this thing was coming up, and you wouldn't go do it. And early morning, drive up to the recruit sustainment program. I think usually you had to be there for like 5 or 6 in the morning. Usually,
Mm.
you go do your PT in the morning, Saturday morning, and then you go right into all the different types of training that you would do. Land navigation, whatever. I mean, like they
Okay.
prepared us, like I said, for every aspect of basic training, with the exception of the gas chamber. Every aspect of it,
Gotcha. Okay.
um, like rappelling, like confidence courses, like rappelling, or like ropes courses or stuff like that. Like I said, firearms training, all sorts of stuff, drill and ceremonies, everything.
Sure.
Even ran us through the whole PT process that we do in basic training. It was just the same thing. And honestly, like going to basic training and looking back, the
Hmm.
RSP was actually harder. I thought the
Oh,
drill
really?
sergeants were more intense. I thought they were more intense probably because they knew they only had 2 days with
Right.
you. Yeah,
Yeah, got to give it to them
yeah,
hard now.
yeah. Because then you're going to also go back to being a civilian, and then you're going to come back in a month, right? They had to
Sure.
keep right, like maintain this atmosphere of like real intense pressure and professionalism in this environment.
Huh. Yeah. So was I shouldn't probably know this, but is uh was boot camp the same as regular army? Was it a regular army boot camp or
Yeah, so National Guard, reserves, active duty, army, they all go
Mhm.
to the same basic
Okay.
training. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Huh. And then you split out after that or what's
No,
the pipeline
no.
like?
Yeah, so you go through your basic training with
Hmm.
everyone else. You go through your AIT with everyone else, and
Okay.
then when you get to your line units, that's where it separates. You either continue
Gotcha.
doing your active stuff, or you go to being reserve or National Guard. And
Okay.
I'd say probably the only difference would be in your AIT, because your state is paying for your training. National Guard, they get priority for classes in AIT. So like I
Hmm.
showed up
Okay.
to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for artillery. I was our 13 mic rocket artillery.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
the
yeah, okay.
HIMARS or the 270 MLRSs. That's what I
Right.
did. Um, and so I showed up to my AIT at Fort Sill, and I'm going into classes in 2 days, right? Well, there's people who are active duty who are still waiting for a slot for a class like 9 weeks in. Like they're still waiting for a slot.
Interesting. Okay. Huh.
But because we're getting paid for by the state, not the federal government, we take priority. Because if we're sitting there for 9 weeks, that means New Hampshire has to foot the bill for that, and they're not going to be too happy.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The I knew a guy who was an MLRS driver, and I don't remember maybe I don't remember which invasion at what point in Iraq, but he got deployed in Iraq and ended up just driving transport trucks.
Yeah,
Because
that's
pretty
what
quickly it was like, yeah, there's no use for you here, bud.
the nickname for 13 Mike is 13 miscellaneous. They'll have us do all sorts of
Right,
stuff, being truck drivers or MPs, wherever they want to fill us in. Usually,
right. Yeah, I had the there in the modern war. There's probably not much use for a rocket system, is there? I mean,
so that's where Big Army is moving towards, is towards rocket artillery systems. Um,
oh, okay, okay,
so you could probably see this sort of pivot happen probably right when I got in 2016,
hmm
2017, and started really pivoting towards MLRS, specifically with the HIMARS, because the HIMARS can be lowered and they can fit inside a C-130.
oh, okay,
So if
sure,
you want to have like, go support like special forces or something in Afghanistan, all you need to do is find a field big enough for a C-130 to land on, roll out the HIMARS, shoot a fire mission in support of like special forces or something, roll back on and
sure.
fly off. And that's what we call a high rain mission.
Oh, okay, yeah, like super mobile artillery.
Yeah,
You're not like a self propelled gun. You're that's crazy. You fly in on a plane,
yeah.
shoot and scoot.
I haven't done a
That
combat high rain, but I did a training one, and it's scary being in there. I'll tell you.
yeah, I bet because I mean, it's a hostile area, so probably your landing and takeoff is an extremely aggressive one, I would think.
Well, we did it off of a runway, so
Yeah,
it was pretty fine. Just being in a metal box inside a metal box, right?
right. Oh, you're in the HIMAR while it's flying.
Yeah. So if you
Oh,
load the HIMARS into the C-130, there's
right.
not enough room to open your doors. That's how tight it is.
Oh, okay. Crazy,
Yeah.
crazy. So, but the MLRS cannot. I forget the number of that vehicle, but it can't fit in a 130. It's
Yeah.
too big.
The 270, the tracked ones based off of
Yeah.
the Bradley chassis. Yeah. No, those can't fit.
Okay. Okay. Huh. That'd be crazy. That'd be quite the experience. Huh. So yeah. So you stayed in 13, 13 Mike. You said right. You
Yep.
stayed that the whole time in.
I did. Yeah.
Okay. Huh. And that's rocket as opposed to artillery, correct?
Well, so
Or
13 series is artillery series, right?
oh,
So
okay,
like
gotcha.
a 13 Bravo is like a howitzer.
Okay,
13 Mike is the rocket artillery. Um, the 13 Foxtrot has forward observers. 13 Juliets are our fire control specialists, right? They're the ones who direct where we shoot and stuff like that. So
okay,
anything 13 series is artillery.
gotcha. Okay, huh? Yeah. Well, so what about like self-propelled guns? Is that also 13, or is that
Yeah,
tank series?
yeah.
Okay,
So so Bravos, 13 Bravos can also be in like the Paladin system, which self-propelled meaning that like the artillery can move on its own. So like
right.
technically we are a self-propelled system, the rocket
Oh, of
artillery.
course, right.
Yeah.
Sure, that's true. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. I remember seeing a big argument a while back about what is a tank. It was
Right. Yeah.
like I think people don't realize that if you're outside of the industry, whatever it is, like there's people that get very specific and names mean things, and to an outsider, it's like, well, I mean, it's all whatever, right? It's all a car. Well, no, like this is a particular kind of car, and
Yeah.
so it was pretty funny. But yeah, the so did you didn't ever deploy, correct?
Nope, never
Okay.
deployed. I did go to Eastern Europe, Slovenia and Hungary.
Hmm. Okay. Sure. Oh, was it
That
like
was
a
a
training or support?
Yeah, that was a training mission.
Okay.
Essentially, what the higher ups wanted to do is they wanted to see what was the process for taking a force in the United States, getting all of our equipment and personnel overseas to Europe, to Eastern Europe, right? If
Sure.
preparing for like some sort of conflict with Russia or something like that, and see how long it would take us to traverse Eastern Europe and get set up, get um, our battalion TAA set up, and figure out working with other countries, stuff like that. And that's not something a lot of units really train on. I mean, like
Hmm.
in Europe, you have the active duty side in Germany. I mean, like they're operating in their own bubble. They're not really interacting with other countries too much, or at least they're like in Germany, they're just working with German forces, or in
Sure.
France, they're just working with French forces, not across lines, right? Because we had to work with the Slovenians, and the Slovenians had to work with the Hungarians, and we also had to work with the Hungarians. So it was like we had Italians in there, we had Romanians that were helping out. Like it was this big, huge NATO force that was working on how do we mobilize troops across to Eastern Europe, especially where the infrastructure isn't that great either in Eastern Europe.
Sure.
A lot of it is run down Soviet stuff still.
Hmm. Yeah. 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 That'd be quite interesting. It almost sounds like a 1970s type exercise. You know, the
Yeah,
Russians are coming. Let's deploy or something. That's wild. Yeah, because
yeah,
for the last years it's been Middle East based or whatever. At least that's what's most common. I think it may have still happened, but
yeah. You definitely, since I've been in, which I think coming in towards the tail end of the whole wars in the Middle East thing, and transitioning into because right 2014 Russia took over Crimea, and that kind of got a lot of people wondering, is there going to be some sort of future conflict with Russia? um,
right,
and then of course you had between 2014 all the way until now, you had the war in the Donbass between Ukraine and Donetsk and Luhansk, the two
right,
regions in Donbass, fighting for their independence, while getting support from Russia. So it was definitely the eyes were taking off of the Middle East, especially since public opinion has been on the decline about the wars in the Middle East, and
right.
trying to pivot more towards China and Russia. How do we fight a bigger war against bigger countries, not just insurgent groups?
Yeah, yeah. For so many years we've been focused on you know 12 guys with AKs, and now we're shifting back to um, more a larger, more traditional style conflict. I mean, I'm sure the higher ups have always had their minds on all of it, but as far as what we've actually been doing, there's quite a shift.
I mean,
Huh,
you'd be
that'd be crazy.
surprised though. I mean, if you read stuff like the Afghanistan papers, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the really higher ups in the Pentagon, they were just so hyper focused on this thing that they were even losing sight of what was right in front of them.
Right, right. Yeah,
They even in the Middle East, they had no idea what was going on. They also were like, we need to make this happen, but we don't know what the direction this is.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's not necessarily what we were hearing in the news, but that's the reality on the ground.
Yeah,
But it's probably pretty common, I guess. Hmm. Yeah. So what? Let me see. Um, I apologize. I'm spacing out. So yeah. So what kind of your time in, and then you've gotten out since, right? Are
that's
you
right.
still
Yeah,
in? Okay.
yeah. I got out in June of 2022.
Oh, okay. So yeah, recently.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, dude, I it's 2023 now. If someone, I feel like 2018 was 2 years ago. It's ridiculous. But yeah,
Yeah.
so kind of recently, I guess.
Yeah,
But
I mean, it feels like yesterday, except I see this beard, right? So I
right,
actually, I made a promise to myself because through high
yeah.
school I did 4 years of junior ROTC. Um, so
Oh,
couldn't grow any kind of facial hair in high school.
right,
6 years in the military, I was like, if I ever get out, I'm gonna do a 1 year beard. I'm
right.
gonna do it. It's my commitment.
Yeah. No, that's coming strong, dude. That's that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say more than a year. It looks like, but so everybody's different. I knew a guy. He could every year for elk season, like 2 weeks before elk season, he'd stop shaving, and he had a full. I mean, it felt like it. Maybe it was more like a couple months, but he'd have a full beard by the time it was time to go out in the woods and get an elk. It was crazy. I was like, come on.
It's a lot of work. It's definitely more than I thought it was going to be. But
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this upcoming June where I can kind of bring it back down, tame it a little.
Right. Right. Yeah. I did a 1 year, committed to a year once, and it was pretty much this. I can't get much going for some reason, but it is what it is. Maybe I should grunt harder. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, so you got out recently then. So were you planning to stay in, or what was the deal there?
Yeah, I mean, initially when I wanted to join, and also when I did join, probably like the first year, 2016, 2017, going into 2018, I was like, I'm going to be a lifer. This is awesome. I'm about this stuff, you know. Um, and then it just progressively, like every single year, it just got worse and worse and worse. And I think most people could probably say the same thing, is that especially in the last 5 years, 6 years, it's gotten a lot worse than it ever has been. I know
Hmm.
we had a bunch of, staff sergeant, sergeant first classes, right? They were coming up on 20 years in, and they were like, I can't take it anymore. Something's changed and I don't like it.
Oh
And
wow,
so even if they only had a couple years left, they were out. Had a
that's
guy, he
tough.
had 2 years left. He couldn't do it. He was just so fed up.
Wow, that's a bummer. Yeah, especially that says a lot, especially that close.
Yeah.
If someone had been in 2 or 3 years, it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's understandable. But
Yeah. Yeah. And I
wow,
mean, you could use that kind of like anecdotal evidence, like I knew this guy. But then if you look at like the actual, recruitment numbers and retention numbers with the entire military, not just the National Guard or the Army or whatever, it's way down.
sure.
Can't get anyone to stay. My last month, my last drill, we lost, I think it was, no, it was 4 people that we lost in my one unit.
Oh
We're
wow,
all done in 1 month.
wow.
And there was 1 month we had 7 people go all at once.
Yeah, I
And
saw.
that's just one unit too. I mean, there's how many across the entire country?
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. How big is the unit?
So in New Hampshire, like a typical artillery battery or like an infantry company is probably like 70 people.
Oh
60, 70
wow.
people. Yeah.
So you lost 10% in 1 week, 1 month.
Yeah.
Holy cow, that's crazy. I saw something, and I don't know if it's true or not, but they were talking about they were relaxing or removing the fitness standards. It couldn't have been removing something about relaxing or something, just because of retention issues. It's just like, I mean, at some point you've got a what's it called, a self perpetuating problem.
Yeah.
You almost can't dig yourself out of it.
Well, so um, the APFT, the Army Physical Fitness Test, right?
Yeah.
That's where I started doing it. It was until uh, well, they wanted us to start doing it in 2021, but we said no. So pretty much 2022 is when it has been fully implemented into the Army. Was the ACFT, the Army Combat Fitness Test? That's what they're calling this new thing.
Okay,
But
yeah,
the
yeah.
ACFT was,
New name on the same pig.
yeah, that well, two different tests, like really different tests. So the
Hmm.
APFT, the one that I was brought into, is the 2 minutes push-ups, 2 minutes sit-ups, 2 mile run. Right, that was it. And the
Okay.
standards were set by age and gender. Right. Um, so if you were, 24 years old and a male, you had to do, I think it was 56 push-ups or something like that, and
Oh, in the 2 minute
six,
time limit.
yeah, and 67
Okay,
sit-ups or something like that, right?
sure.
And you had to do you had to do like a 15:56 2 mile run, I think it was.
Okay,
So, and then it was different if you were a female. So like a female, the run was the same. Usually the sit-ups was the same, but then like push-ups was only like 20 push-ups or something like that.
sure, sure.
So they changed that to have no gender or age separation between the two fitness, between any of the fitness tests. There's this Army Combat Fitness Test.
Really? No
Um,
age difference?
no age. It was just this. So you could get points for this, right?
Uh
So
huh.
like there was a pretty wide spectrum of how many points you could achieve, but there was no age or gender brackets or whatever that you could fall into to get more points in your test. So
Right.
like in order to get the 60% that you need to go to like Army schools, right? Like sergeant school, basic leader course, advanced leader course, mountain combat school, right?
Hmm.
All these different schools, you need 60%, and that's how it was with the old tests. So with this new one, so like for everybody, push-ups is 10 push-ups. Everybody
Holy
is 10
smokes!
push-ups. The 2 mile run, you have to do it in under 21 minutes.
Wow, I could do that, and I hate running.
You could walk that, and I have
Yeah, no
walked it.
kidding. Holy cow! 10 push-ups?
Yep.
Jeez
There's so
Louise.
instead of having three tests, 3 phases, right? The
Hmm.
push-ups, sit-ups, and the run. They moved it to six. So there's a deadlift, and I think it's 140 pounds for the 60% for the deadlift.
Okay.
Um, there's a behind the back medicine ball toss. So you're throwing a ball over your head behind your back, and I think that's 6 feet you have to
What
make.
is this? CrossFit?
I think that's what they were trying to
Oh my
implement there.
goodness.
Um, there's a like a shuttle sprint, whatever. So you have to like
Hmm.
run out, run back, run out with like a sled on you. I think the
Hmm.
sled has like 60 pounds on it, I think.
Wow.
Um, run back and then go out with kettlebells, run out and then run back. And I think that's counts. I forget what the time limit on that one was.
Because if you're
Um,
needing to drag a buddy, he's just going to weigh 60 pounds.
right, yeah.
So
Oh,
I can like
yeah.
understand. I could see if they were like, look, we're going to have one standard, and this is a very high bar. And if you're too old, you're too old. Like you have to be young and fit. This is going to be a fit man's army, and we're just going to blow everybody out of the water. I can see that. But when you have a single standard and then just drop it so ridiculously low, that just it seems counterproductive. I hadn't heard this. This is crazy.
Well, they're dropping it even more since I've left,
Are you
because what they're
serious?
finding is that a lot of so one of the things that they had was a on like the pull up bar, you had to do like a knee to elbow touch, right? You had to leg tuck was what they called it.
Oh,
So,
okay, sure.
and pretty much no female could do that exercise. So they got rid of that one entirely.
That I've never tried that. That seems easier than a chin up. Was it not?
It
Seems
is
like
easier
less
than
upper
chin up.
body strength. Okay,
Yep.
because women can do chin ups. I mean, I think. I don't know. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I think they're increasing the 2 mile run even more, stuff like that. But yeah, um, what they found
Wow.
is since implementing this one standard for everybody, that not everyone that's currently in can pass it. And with recruitment and retention already at a record low, they can't afford to lose anybody, so they just got to keep lowering those standards.
Wow. They should just issue fitness waivers and on an individual basis. That might be easier.
And the
Oh,
other thing too is that all these different tests now require more equipment, right? Um, so like before, when you had the push-up, sit-ups, run, right? All you needed was enough space to do push-ups
oh,
and sit-ups, and a track or like a
right.
road that you
A
could
measured
do
distance.
yeah, a measured distance.
Yeah.
That's it. But now you need measuring devices, right? Because when you do the
Yep.
medicine ball toss or whatever, you got to measure the distance for that. So you have to have some sort of tape measure. You have to have the medicine ball itself. You have to have
Right.
enough weights, right, and bars across the spectrum to be able to do the deadlift, right, up to getting 100% on that.
Right. Right.
You have to have a place before when they had the leg talk. You had to have like pull-up bars available. So you had to have
Right.
all these different equipment. And so like let's just say you were a soldier who was, kept failing their push-ups or something like that, right? You're
Hmm.
good on sit-ups, good on the run, just couldn't do the push-ups, right? So you weren't passing your PT test. Well, you could keep taking that PT test as long as there was a grader there to grade you, right? Because you could do it anywhere.
Right.
And
Sure.
now,
Just keep making
now,
attempts.
right? And so, like, let's just say you were a specialist for 4 years, right? In E4, you want to become a sergeant, you just can't make those push-ups, right? But you're like
Hmm.
this close. You're like so close to making it. Maybe like the 56 is the standard. Maybe you keep hitting like 53, right?
Right. Right.
So you could keep taking that test and improve yourself, and probably within 2 weeks, you could probably hit that 56 push-ups
Sure.
easily. Now with this new test where you need all this equipment, you can't do it on your own. You got to wait until the next time your whole unit cycles through the PT test.
Oh. Right. Right. Because you can't just do one aspect of it. You have to do the whole gamut because
Right.
it's also like a cardio ish measurement, I would assume.
Yeah. And the whole thing has to be done. I think it's within 60 minutes. The entire
The new
everyone.
one.
Yeah, but the new one,
Okay.
every person has to be done within 60 minutes.
Oh. So
Yeah.
you can't run that many people through at a time.
You
Or,
have to
or
run the
each
you have
person gets a 60-minute window.
no so when the test starts and when the test finish is 60 minutes. So everyone starts at the same time,
Oh.
everyone either finishes before or you're done once the 60 minutes is passed.
Dude, this is an
Um
event. This
oh
isn't just
yeah.
oh, this is like field day or
Yeah.
something. Like good grief. I, yeah. it's it's a classic situation of a bureaucracy solution to a problem just creates more problems.
I think that's exactly what it was. um
Wow.
I think they were getting too much flack or something. Someone was getting too much, flack that maybe the standards were unequitable or something like that, or maybe someone, in order to keep their job, like right, like the senior most fitness trainer in the army, right? He had to come up with someone, or he was going to get replaced. So he was like, ACFT, let's do this.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of factors at play, but those are definitely the
Yeah,
high ones. Just trying to if women are not failing or not passing the physical fitness, then it's the test fault. It's not. There can't
yeah,
be physiological factors at play. It has to be the
yeah.
test. And then
Well,
yeah, like first. Go ahead.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about equity, right? Trying to make sure that like the male and female standards are the same, right?
Sure,
Trying like
that's
this
true.
whole like inclusivity, right? Stuff like that is going on a lot within not just the military, but pretty much all institutions.
Yeah, yeah, huh? Yeah, that's wild. I mean, just you talking about the fitness test. I'm like, hey, if I was at a fair and I saw this thing set up, I'd be like, hey, let's try it. You know, as opposed to, I mean, it just sounds like a fun thing to do and test yourself. It doesn't really seem like it's that difficult. I don't know. I haven't done it, so maybe it is. But
If you're going for like 100 score, right, it's
mhm.
super hard. It is really hard. Like
Okay,
even
sure.
even the people who are getting like 100%, so like before like the old PT test, it was 300 points was the max that you could get, right?
Hmm.
So now with this new one, it's 600 points, right? Because there's 6 events. So if you wanted like if you were going to be a 300 score like PT stud with the
Hmm.
old test, it was really hard to do that. But now with the 600 points, if you wanted, 600 out of 600, like even the people who were the PT studs, they still can't do it. It is very difficult to get that
Oh,
100%. Yeah.
okay. So it's still there's still the opportunity to push
Yeah.
yourself. It's
Yeah.
just that the bottom of the bar is the bottom quadrant, I guess, or
Yeah.
whatever, has been lowered. Okay.
Yeah. And
Huh.
um, I just remember this too. They got rid of this aspect of it. But what they were going to do was split your standard to pass between MOS, right? So if you were in a combat MOS, you had to have a higher standard than you were if you were like a non-combat MOS, or maybe like
Sure.
a non-combat but high physical requirements. So like a carpenter or something like that, right? You still need to be
Hmm.
some sort of physically fit to be like an army carpenter or like an engineer or something like that, but not like combat standard or something like that, right?
Sure.
So
Sure.
they split it up into 3 different sections for trying to accommodate MOS, and then they just scrapped that altogether, and now it's just one standard throughout everything.
Right. That yeah. Uh, so you could have had a situation where a woman is doing a like just not combat but a physical job, and then a guy is doing a complete office job and now has lower standards that he's held to than the female.
Right.
Dude, bureaucracy is such a
Yeah.
scam. That's wild.
But
I
yeah, it is wild, and that's some of the stuff that like a lot of us were noticing, especially the guys who had been there even longer than I had.
sure.
They were in, since some of them since the '90s, and they were like, "This, I've had enough with this stuff. I'm out." And
Yeah.
then another big thing that changed with the National Guard specifically is that I'm sure you've heard with like the National Guard, it's 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
Not true at all. Most drills are a 4-day weekend, right? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh.
Um, I could, I, I don't even know. Probably like maybe 10 drills in 6 years I had were 2 days.
Mm.
And then your annual training, which would be that 2 weeks during the summer,
Hmm.
that was always like 3, 4 weeks, always.
Sure.
And in 2019, when we came back from Hungary, we rolled right back into another 2 week AT later that year.
Oh, okay, sure. Not immediately, but like you had the whole deployment or
Yeah,
not deployment, the whole training exercise, and then your regular. Wow.
yeah. So we did 3 weeks, right? We did that in June, and
Okay,
then in October we did another 2 weeks.
got you. Okay. Which, yeah.
So
So there's like laws and stuff that employers can't fire you, right? Because of
right,
your. But still, that's got to be tough to. It's got to be tough on your employer.
yeah. I
I would
mean,
think.
they
I
can't
mean,
do anything about it, but your relationship with your employer is not going to be great if you have to keep taking all this time off. Plus, I mean, like you got to be able to take personal time off as well.
right.
So like it just puts both the guardsman and the employer in just really uncomfortable situations, and especially like every single month is you're taking 2 days off work just to
Yeah.
go do this drill thing.
Yeah. Huh. Which I can like that logically. That makes logistically. I mean, that makes sense. That if you're going to have a drill, it's better. It's more efficient to have 4 days than 2 days. If you're going out in the field or depending on what you're doing for a drill, I could see 2 days is kind of like, well, we arrive and we tootle around and then we're gone. But yeah, to have the expectation, 2 days and then, well, no, actually it's 4 days and you're gonna need to schedule more. Huh? That's
Well, it's
tough.
mostly admin work that they're having us do.
Oh, okay. Huh? So when you had a training day, what percentage of it was like getting in the unit, driving around, not even firing stuff off, but like using the equipment?
Uh, a regular drill or in the year?
In the
I,
year, yeah.
I mean, like an average drill, 0%.
Oh,
The
seriously?
average drill. Probably the only times we ever did our job as artillery was, the 3 4 weeks for AT that we had scheduled, and maybe like 2 or 3 other times a year.
Wow. So, well, that
We
makes
did it a
it.
lot. We did a lot more when I first got in, right?
Mm-hmm.
2017, 2018. Um, we were pretty much every single drill we were doing our job, right? We were going out to like a quarry that was closed on the weekends, right?
Okay.
Big open space, plenty of room for us to drive around, do like interact to ambush operations and convoys, do practice fire missions, camp out, stuff like that. Like
Okay.
plenty of, and it was only like a 5 minute drive from our armory too. Like it was pretty sweet. We
Hmm.
were going out all the time. And then I don't know, something happened like right yeah, probably right after our AT in 2018. We went to Michigan. We did this big huge operation in Michigan, with a
Mm-hmm.
whole bunch of different other National Guards and active duty units, and there were a couple other countries that came from, like Estonia and Germany, and I think Norway was there as well.
Hmm.
We had Marines there too, so Air Force participated in this big operation as well. So I don't know, something happened after. Then that AT went absolutely horribly. it was it, a lot of the people who had been doing it for a long time, longer than I had, they said it was their worst AT ever. It was the worst
Huh.
annual training ever. It
Huh.
was awful. And yeah, something happened right after that, and we didn't do our job anymore.
Hmm. Interesting. Was it associated with? Did it line up with like the end of a big push or something over in deployments? Because I could see how if there's a lot of deployments in the army, the regular army is really cycling through deployments, that they'd want to keep the National Guard up to speed and keep you tip top in case you get deployed. Was that the case, or was it just out of the blue?
Well, so most people don't know this, but the National Guard is 50% of all deployed units. National Guard is half of all units that get deployed.
Right. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and even like in the early 2000s, almost 60% of all deployed units were National Guard.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And so usually National Guard gets slotted for a deployment every 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
And so 2019 was actually going to be our deployment year, which, if you wanted us to be prepared for a deployment, you would think we'd do more job training. Um, but then that just didn't happen. And actually, in 2019, when it was our year to deploy, uh, my unit, the 3rd of the 197th, we didn't have enough unit strength to deploy. So we
Oh,
actually were passed up.
gotcha. Huh. Was that a relief at the time, or were you disappointed?
I didn't want it. Well, at the time, I would have rather have been deployed to like Eastern Europe, because I mean we just came back from Hungary, so like
Sure.
I thought it was pretty cool over there. And there was another National Guard unit over there, South Dakota. They were doing a 9 month deployment in Eastern Europe, and I was like, hey, I mean, like, why can't we do something like that? I don't want to go to the Middle East. That seems boring.
Right. Right. And I'm not going to be able to shoot any rockets. but in
Right.
Europe, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, we were shooting rockets all the time, especially because
Okay.
when we were in Hungary, part of our mission and also part of South Dakota's mission as part of the deployment, because South Dakota had a much larger scope that they were rolling through. Like they were going through Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, Hungary,
Oh
um,
wow.
like a whole bunch of different countries, even into Germany. And their purpose was to try and sell HIMARS. Like they were just going to shoot rockets a bunch, show off to all these different countries,
Sure.
and we did that too in Hungary. We were trying to sell to the Slovenian as like almost like a side to the whole figure out how to move across Eastern Europe was we want
Right.
to sell these weapons to Slovenia and to Hungary.
Right.
So we had a whole bunch of like Hungarian generals come out, watch us shoot and stuff like that.
Huh. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah,
Feel like kind of hobnob with the big wigs, or I guess just know that they're watching you. Maybe that'd be a little stressful.
yeah. Well, so their ranks are different. Like they don't have like the stars or whatever that we have.
Mm.
They it's a little bit different. But I didn't know I was talking to a Hungarian general, and we had gotten our ammo for the shoot that we were going to do the next day at like that same day at like 3 4 in the morning.
Oh wow.
Um, which Yeah, that was really annoying. That was really unsafe. Trying to move live ammunition that late at night when everyone's already tired and everything like that. I get like train how you fight, but let's do that
Hmm.
with not live ammo.
Right.
So yeah, that was not fun, especially since I was an NCO, new NCO at the time, so I was trying to pay more attention to those finer details
Sure.
of how operations work and everything. Um, so we had been up really late, and we still had to stay up, right? Because we had to do that shoot in the morning. My truck was going to fire at 7 in the morning, so we were just staying up, and this truck with like a cab on the back of it, you know, truck cap or whatever. Like it just looked like a regular like civilian truck. He pulls
Right.
up. Um, Guy in uniform comes out. I knew he was an officer, but I didn't know he was like the general of all the Hungarian forces that were
Right.
surrounding us. And he's like, "Hey, you guys want coffee?" So one thing, because Hungary was part of Austria for a really long time,
Hmm.
uh, a lot of Hungarians also speak German, and
Oh
I
sure.
took I took German in high school, so I knew a little bit of German. So I was able, like, whatever he didn't know in English, I could
Right.
kind of substitute with some German, and we could figure out most of the time. And yeah, so this guy, he just starts making everybody coffee while we're waiting around to go onto the firing line and do our shoot.
Right.
And he had this really cool patch on him, and kind of like this thing that you do with other militaries is you trade patches, right?
Uh huh.
So I pulled off my unit patch and I was like, "Do you want to trade patches?" And he pulled off his and gave it, and we just swapped. And I was walking around with this Hungarian. He was part of a Hungarian EOD unit,
Oh okay. Sure.
um, which also a couple nights later we had a run in where we needed them because we were camping out in a field, and one guy, he found a UXO, unexploded ordnance from World War
Yeah.
II, right next to
Oh
his
wow.
tent. Yeah. So we had to call them out. They
That,
disarmed it and
yeah.
everything. Yeah.
That'd be
But yeah, so I've got this really cool patch now from Hungary.
that's funny.
When I, you know, go out do field missions or whatever, and I had my plate carrier on, I always put it on my plate carrier.
Is that is that ever frowned upon? Like if someone saw you, could they be like, "Hey, look, that's not regulation," or what?
So yes and no. I mean,
Okay.
they allow like morale patches.
Mm,
So like
sure.
maybe like some fun patch or something like that, maybe. But they don't want you to have other unit patches on you, or especially not foreign. stuff, but
Right.
no one really cared.
So as long as no one notices, you're
Yeah.
fine. But technically, yeah,
I got
that's
told to take
cool.
it off from a commander from a different unit than mine, and I just took it off when I was around his unit, and then when we went back to our battery area, I put it back on.
Right. Right. Huh. Yeah, I was wondering, being a National Guard and rarely actually using your vehicles. Do you have did you have a vehicle assigned to you that just sat there and you rarely drove, or what vehicle did you use?
So I started off in so I got done with my AIT,
Hmm.
my training. It was 6 weeks long, complete waste of time. Pretty much anytime we had questions about like how like a HIMARS or an MLRS system operated or
Hmm.
anything, they would just tell you, you'll learn that at your line unit.
Okay.
So pretty much all my AIT was learning how to be the ammo side of a 13 mic, right? Being able to resupply ammunition and drive like the ammo trucks and stuff like that.
Sure.
Um, which even that was pretty easy. I mean, that to learn all that stuff probably took like a week, not 6 weeks. And then when I got to my first line, pretty much all new 13 mics go into ammo platoon, right? And they just do ammo stuff and
Gotcha.
until like you show you're competent in some way and a slot opens up on the trucks, you're going to stay in ammo until you're ready to move up.
Okay.
And my first drill, I was in ammo for 2 hours, and we had a guy who was leaving. It was his last drill, and a crew chief, he wanted a new driver, and he didn't want any of the ammo guys that had already been around for a while. He just didn't like any of the current people. So he was like, "New
Right.
guy, you're with me." So I got thrown right into a launcher, right out of AIT, something that just doesn't happen with 13 mics, and moved. In a year I was a gunner, and then in another year I was a crew chief of my own truck. And
Mm.
pretty much it's almost like team captains or whatever, picking teams for like dodgeball or something like that. You have at the end of every year,
Sure.
um, the two platoon sergeants and the platoon commanders, they got together and they pretty much did like a draft, and they're like, so there are four trucks per platoon. So basically, they went back and forth picking guys for, first they would go through all the crew chiefs. So pick
Right.
8 guys for crew chiefs, and to be a chief, you had to be either a sergeant or a staff sergeant, um, or special case, be a high speed specialist like I was.
Right.
Um, and then they would just keep moving down the line. The gunner was the next highest rank in the truck, so that was either a specialist or a sergeant. And then usually the driver was like a private first class or a specialist.
Mm. Huh. So was there ever a situation where the crew
I
chief
think I lost audio there.
check? You got me now? What's going on? Hello? Check. I'm showing up on my thing. Nothing? I can hear you.
Oh, got you
Am I
back.
back? Okay. That
Yep.
was weird. I don't know what was going on. Here, let me make a note. Oh, see if I can cut that out. I might not remember. Um, oh yeah, the was there ever a situation where the crew chief was outranked by the gunner, technically,
No, that
or
that never happened.
okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
It was a little weird when I was a crew chief, right, being a specialist, and then
Right.
having another gunner who was also a specialist.
Okay. So you'd be the same rank maybe, but not.
Yeah.
It never
And this was like
converted.
a very rare case that, I mean, this was the first time that this had ever happened where you had a specialist being a crew chief.
Right.
Um, and, this was because of the very low retention rate. We had so many guys who were
Mm,
sergeants and staff sergeants getting out that they just couldn't fill all the roles. I mean, we had, for a while, we just had like 3 empty trucks. They didn't have a single crew member in them.
Wow. Huh. Well, it's kind of nice. You're like, oh, all right, I'll take
Yeah.
advantage of this. I like telling people what to do. Huh. Yeah, that's quite the bump. So yeah. So was that your primary motivation for getting out? Was just the whole bureaucracy confusion of things, or what was the deal there?
uh, it was part of it. Probably. Well, I don't know. Yeah, it was a large factor.
Hmm.
The other part um, would have to be kind of my whole disillusionment with what we were doing as a military. Um,
Oh yeah, sure.
when we were in Hungary, I was kind of hanging out waiting for it because I mean, not just doing live fires, but we were also doing a bunch of practice fire missions. I mean, like we were pretending like we were fighting Russia.
Hmm.
And we were out in the field doing all sorts of stuff. And a lot of times it's a lot of hurry up and wait. I'm sure you've heard that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
we're waiting and waiting for some sort of fire mission to come down. And you're in a truck, it's a 3-man truck, and you're in the cab together, and it's pretty tight quarters, and you just have to wait and hang out until you hear that comms alarm go off on our gunners panel that tells
Hmm.
us that we've got a fire mission. And then once we hear that alarm, it's showtime. Let's go do our thing. But all that in between, we're kind of just hanging out. Um, Sometimes we would get like lawn chairs and put them up on the back of the launcher and like hang out and stuff on the roof of our truck. Um, you know,
Right.
people like when we're stateside, usually people would bring like coolers and strap them to the sides of the truck and stuff like that. Just tons of like snacks and
Sure.
energy drinks, whatever.
Make
So
a
we're just
picnic
hanging
day out of
out.
it.
Yeah, might as well. You got nothing else going on. Um, and just waiting around for a fire mission to come down. And I was on my phone and I read this story about it was 2015 Airman Daniel Hale. He was the guy who blew the whistle on the drone papers.
Oh
Um,
yeah, sure.
and that was that 90% of drone strikes in the Middle East were on innocent civilians.
Right.
And I read that. I was like, whoa, we are getting a lot of our same intel for our fire missions that these drones are getting too.
Oh yeah. No. So it hit you personally. It's not just
Yeah,
like this abstract story.
right, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
like if we got sent to the Middle East, right, and we had to go do fire missions out of Jordan into Syria to go fight, I don't know, like ISIS or something like that, right?
Mm.
Um, and now I'm like, okay, now I've got to give orders that it's a 90% chance that I'm not going to hit the intended target, that I'm not going to hit someone that I think I'm hitting.
Sure. Hmm.
Then that's not just like rockets going off course or anything like that. That is just purely bad intel.
Right.
Or
You're hitting the target you were given, but
right,
it's not a good one, or it's
right,
not an acceptable one. Yeah.
and that just got me thinking. Like
Hmm.
I I want to do this thing, right? Fight the bad guys, but like, who are these bad guys?
Hmm.
And then that started getting me. Like once that hit me, then I started going down the rabbit hole. Right? Then it was like, okay, um, how is Al Qaeda our enemies in Afghanistan and in Iraq, but they are our allies in Libya and in Yemen and in Somalia?
Right.
Right?
Right.
How is that possible? Why are we working with the guys that were fighting in other countries? And
Right.
then it just got into even further into the rabbit hole where it's like, okay, maybe we're here for the wrong reasons. Maybe we're
Hmm.
not trying to get the bad guys, right? Um, you start looking into, okay, October 16th, 2001, the Taliban offered the United States bin Laden to us.
Right. Right.
and we said no and went forward with the invasion of Afghanistan.
Right.
Right? If the whole purpose was revenge, the whole purpose of the Afghan war was revenge against 9/11, why did we give up that opportunity to get the guy responsible?
Hmm. Yeah. What
Uh,
I think, weren't they offering him through like a third party country or something, and we said, well, no, we want you to hand him to us directly or
yeah,
something like
originally
that.
they wanted to hand him over to any Muslim country with a trial.
Okay. Okay.
And
So they
then
had
they
some
said,
conditions, and we're like, no, those
yeah.
conditions aren't good enough.
And then
We
they
need,
said any country with a trial. And then they just said any country. They could have handed him
sure.
off to Canada, right? We
Right.
would have said,
Right.
okay, send him to Canada. And that would have been fine with the Taliban. But we said no.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then, of course, like everyone knows now, the big lie with the Iraq war, right? The weapons of mass destructions, which there were none.
Right. Yeah.
And even, Desert Storm, right? Going even back to the 90s. The whole Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, right? There was this, looking back on history, there was the Kuwaiti nurse who testified in front of the UN saying that Iraqi soldiers were like throwing babies on the ground and shooting
Right.
them and stuff like
Pulling
that.
them out of incubators, I think
Right.
she was
Yeah.
saying. Yeah. Yeah.
Turns out she was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States and she got acting lessons. She wasn't a Kuwaiti nurse. It was all a
Right.
lie. And
Yeah.
then they were saying that the Iraqis were amassing an army on the Saudi border. Russian satellite footage shows that there were no army on the Saudi border. That was another lie that they just made up.
Hmm.
And yeah, so like seeing all this different stuff. I mean, another big one. We can go back to the '60s, Gulf of Tonkin. That didn't happen. That was a complete made up lie to get
Sure.
us into
Yeah.
Vietnam.
Yeah.
Well known now, right? The United States Naval Institute. If you look up Gulf of Tonkin, right on the United States Naval Institute, it said that it didn't happen.
Right.
Um, and so I was like, all right, what's going on here? What am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're all you motivated, high speed dude, and then you start reading this stuff, and you're like, wait, you know, and it's not just yesterday; it goes back in time too, and you're just all of a sudden you're questioning everything about your involvement.
Yeah,
Huh?
and
That'd
yeah,
be tough.
I was a history major in college too. I did 3 years of college doing social studies education.
Which is always embarrassing, but it is what it is. Yeah, you were saying college and 3 years in college and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Did 3 years of college. Was a social studies education major, and even it's not like just the military who's keeping secrets or like trying to cover stuff up. I mean, like, being a history major, not learning that the Gulf of Tonkin was a make believe incident, and going through college courses and them still treating it like fact. Again, another
Oh
pretty
yeah,
huge awakening.
right. Huh? You're like, no, actually, this didn't happen,
Right.
and they're like, no, no, it happened.
Um,
Oh man.
yeah, so that was part of it. Started um, learning about like Ron Paul, right, who ran his whole
Sure.
campaign around trying to end the wars, try to prevent the wars. A real sound understanding of what was going on, right? He talked a lot about like blowback, right? Um,
Yeah.
you know, if you, I've read Bin Laden's declaration of war against the United States. It doesn't say anything about our culture or how we dress or if we wear jeans or because of our freedom or whatever that he hates us. He hates us because we've been invading, you know, his country and backing, Israel and stuff like that for the
Right.
last 2 decades.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I mean, like, it just makes sense, and that also brought me into being of the libertarian philosophy and mindset. Um,
Hmm. Sure.
Brought me into like the non-aggression principle, which ultimately is why I joined the military. Right, I wanted to defend. Right, the non-aggression principle is about not using aggression unless you need to defend yourself. And I
Sure.
thought that I was defending my community when, in fact, I was a part of this organization that was an aggressor against other people.
Right. Yeah. Even if like you were saying, as emergency response, it's still like you're defending your community from a flood or from an earthquake or whatever. Like there's a um, really honorable aspect to that, And yeah, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other reason why I got out was the whole COVID fiasco.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So all pretty much all of 2020 and 2021, I was activated with the National Guard. So I was full time National Guard, part of the COVID relief unit or COVID response
Oh,
unit, or
gotcha.
yeah.
So how?
Uh,
Well, real quick, how did that work with your civilian job? Like, if you're activated, your every day, like your work day is with the guard, basically.
yeah. No
Okay,
one, anyone who was activated did no longer had a civilian job.
gotcha. Okay, and what's the time? Like, are you told, hey, this is going to be for an X amount of time, or is it just like your employer? You're just like, hey, I'll see you when I see you, kind of thing.
Yep. Pretty much. I'll see you
Oh
when I see you.
man.
Yeah,
Well,
we
that
didn't know when this was going to end.
right. Sure.
So I just got told, hey, so I was actually on orders so I just wrapped up my fall semester, right? So that
Okay.
wrapped up around the first week of December. And then I was going to be on orders for the next week doing maintenance on vehicles. Because like every now and then they like ask around for people to do, side jobs to do like maintenance on vehicles or to like move equipment from one part of the state or something like that. So
Sure.
I volunteered. I just got out of school. I didn't want to go into like a civilian job right away, like a full time civilian job right
Right.
away off of my semester between my next semester. Um, so I was just going to do, and that's how I had been sustaining myself before, was just doing like a bunch of full time missions. So I was going to do like a maintenance job. I was going to work on our trucks, get them all ready to go for. We were going to do a big training mission in March, where we're going to
Mm.
go to Camp Ethan Allen in Vermont. That didn't end up happening because COVID started and the whole yeah. So uh, I got I got activated from uh, December. No, so this was the vaccine mission. So the testing mission. So there was two different missions that they had us do. They had us
Okay.
do in 2020 was pretty much all testing until the vaccines came out, and then they switched us over. I
To the new
only
current thing.
yeah, I was only doing the testing during the summer that year because I was going to go back to school in the fall.
Hmm.
Um, so that's whole summer I did the testing, and then um, December I was on active orders from December 9th until December 12th of 2021. Or sorry, no, 2020. And then it's all a blur.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
It runs together.
and then December 12th, I was told, hey, December 15th, you're going on COVID orders. You're going to be going to the Plymouth, New Hampshire vaccine site. And we don't know when this is going to end. So get ready for a long haul. We want you guys to start delivering vaccines on, I think it was December 18th was the day that they want to start putting uh,
Hmm.
shots in arms.
Sure.
So we only had like 3 days to get ready. And I got put on a really weird team. So it was not only did we have the Plymouth site, but we were also going to do like either 1 week in Plymouth or 1 day in Plymouth and 1 day in Laconia, New Hampshire, which is like another city in kind of central New Hampshire.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, so we weren't in like a lot of the population centers that were like, uh, Manchester, New Hampshire, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, something like that. But there were still two decently sized population areas in central New Hampshire that we had to take care of.
Okay.
And again, we didn't really know what we were going to do. We just knew that we had to do it in 3 days, right?
Right.
So we just showed up at the Plymouth Armory, and this was a joint mission. So we had Air Force there, Air National Guard there was as well, and then basically we had the clinical staff that were like all the combat medics and stuff like that, medical personnel in the military. They were going to be the ones administering the vaccines, and pretty much anyone who was non-medical staff was just in support of them.
Right.
And so I got put in charge of all the non-medical, the non-clinical staff at both the vaccine sites.
Okay.
And so I had to work with the physicians on the medical side to try and come up with some sort of system to administer these vaccines.
Sure.
Something that's never been done before, right? Has never been like this wide scale vaccine distribution. And then not only did we have to do that, but we also had to do it outside. They want it to be like a drive-up clinic.
Oh, and this is in December in New
Yeah,
Hampshire.
in the winter in
Perfect.
central northern New Hampshire. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So there was a whole. I mean, we had to figure out, okay, how are we going to deal with making sure not only do we keep the clinical staff safe, when they have to walk out to vehicles and stuff, right?
Right.
Okay, now we got to worry about ordering sand and salt to make sure that there's enough traction. We have to, because typically there would only be plowing, right, once a month whenever
Right.
the unit would go to drill at the armory. So now we had to figure out a plowing schedule,
Right.
and then okay, there's vehicles involved. Maybe we need jersey barriers, right, to protect us from getting hit by cars.
Right. Right.
And then also, okay, how do we keep the vaccines from freezing? Because not only do the vaccines have to be cold, but they can't get too cold or they're going to freeze.
Right. Good grief.
And then, another spice it up, we had two sites to manage, right? So a lot of people have all their equipment, right, in just one location. We had to manage personnel and resources between two locations.
Wow. Yeah. So like you're saying, it's unprecedented. So everybody involved is pulling from their different experiences in the past and trying to develop a program that covers all these different aspects.
Yeah.
Out of the blue. Like, okay, well, we've lived here. We know what snow is, but like, how do we apply it here in this instance?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, never been done before. We created an entirely new SOP. First day went pretty well. So we ended up doing 1 day in Plymouth, 1 day in Laconia. That's how we kind of worked out our schedule. We figured that would be best. And then the next day, so we had like a regular 8-hour day in Plymouth the first day. It went pretty well. Second day, Laconia ended up being a 15-hour day. We had just hadn't gotten through all our patients until 10, 11 at night.
Wow.
Was it okay.
Lit? Was the lot lit?
That was another thing. We didn't have lighting.
Oh.
We didn't even think that we were going to go that late into the evening, right? Because we thought, all right, everything went this well in Plymouth. Right. We're going to be done before it gets dark. And then moving into the Laconia site, where just the entire procedure that we created for the Plymouth Armory just did not work in Laconia, because we were at the community college in Laconia.
We didn't have your dirt.
Right. We didn't have our own building. We had to put up tents and everything like that, which means that we also had to have generators for heat and everything.
Right.
And so, we got dark, didn't have any lighting. So I was like, okay, back to the drawing boards. Obviously, what works in Plymouth is not going to work in Laconia. So now we have to have two different procedures for two different sites.
Sure.
Which means we need to make sure everyone is capable of handling that. So we need to keep it simple enough for everyone to understand working between the two sites.
Oh, man.
And you know what? We made it work. And we ended up actually being the standard set for all the other vaccine sites across New Hampshire to follow. We eventually got it down that we could be doing our one site either in Plymouth or in Laconia, could be doing 600, 700 patients a day, and finish within like 7, 8 hours, while the other sites were only doing like 300 patients a day, and we're still going like 10 hours into the day.
Wow. Wow.
So we were outpacing everybody. And we always had higher ups coming to check out what the hell we had going on, what we are doing differently.
Right.
And so they just were like, all right, whatever these guys are doing, everyone else needs to do.
Right.
And
Yeah.
as it became warmer and a lot easier to work outside, it just became easier for us. And then, of course, once May rolled around and it was really nice out and we all wanted to be outside, they're like, all right, we're doing indoor clinics now.
Of course.
Yeah. And that just worked even better. Even the indoor stuff. I mean, we were doing like 1,500 patients a day. It was crazy the
I
amount of
bet.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, just the efficiency so much better.
Yep.
Hmm.
But even through all that, I was working with doctors, medical providers, nurses. The entire time, no one knew what this vaccine did. There was no information, right? We had
Right.
doctors, army doctors on site, and they were just like, your best guess is as good as mine. There was no research. There's no any kind of long ranging data to go into this vaccine. No one knows what's going to happen. No one knows if it really works. There's no research into transmissibility. And so I was exposed to that the entire time.
Mm.
And then when August of 2021 rolled around, where they said, okay, everyone in the military needs to get this vaccine, I was like, I'm not doing it.
Sure. Yeah. And so, but then you didn't get out until June, right?
Yep.
Of the next year. So what was the interim like?
So that was a very odd experience because I went from like almost being like the star student, right? I was a specialist who got put into a chief slot, right? I
Right.
was made uh, um, the NCOIC for all non-clinical staff at 2 vaccine sites, right? We made it work that we were essentially the standard set for all the other vaccine sites across the state. I was,
Right.
awarded by the Surgeon General of the state, and General Michaelides, who's the tag for New Hampshire, right? He's
Right.
come down to praise my work and everything like that. I went from that to being treated like the enemy, like overnight. As
Wow.
soon as I said no, it was like thrown to the wolves, and
Right.
they want to ruin me, and anyone else who said no.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, First, we got like a text message that was like, "All right, if you don't have this thing by August, you are going to get sent home. You're going to get dishonorable discharge. Right? You're going to have to pay back your any kind of tuition assistance you received. If you took a bonus, you're going to have to pay that money back."
Yeah. Yeah.
And dishonorable discharge is serious. I mean, that
Yeah.
could
It's a big
prevent you from
deal.
getting a job.
Yeah. Yeah. It's isn't it similar in effect? Maybe not as strong, but similar to a felony, a civilian felony
Yeah, maybe not
in some
as
ways.
strong.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
it's definitely not a good look, and most jobs ask if you've received an other than honorable discharge.
Sure. Sure. Huh.
And when they first told us everyone had to get it, uh, out of my unit of 60, 70 people, 20 guys were like, no, we're not doing it. And then when October came around, it came down to 6 of us.
Mm.
Um,
Yep.
the threats worked. I mean, especially if I was a young soldier and I was going through college and stuff like that, I don't want to lose my free college, right?
Right.
Or I 13 Mike. I mean, they were offering $16,000-$20,000 enlistment bonuses, being told that you have to pay that money back. It's definitely going to scare a lot of people.
Oh, because they hadn't finished their first contract. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and these kids are 17, 18 years old. They don't have that money in a bank account. They've
Right.
spent
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
If you were in any kind of leadership position, so if you were like a platoon sergeant, platoon commander, first sergeant, battery commander, something like that, you were relieved of your position immediately because those are appointed
Wow.
positions.
Okay.
So um, I know of a first sergeant and a commander, two different units, but both in New Hampshire that said no. They're both relieved of their command.
Wow. That's some
Yeah.
serious effects there.
And totally illegal too. I mean, I had all the Army regulations. So come October, I was like, all right, I'm going to be prepared. I had everything in a binder. I had letters, all the FDA documents, all the Pfizer documents, right? Because Pfizer at
Mm,
the time was the only FDA approved drug.
right.
And you cannot mandate that the military get a emergency use authorized vaccine. It has to be FDA approved. So
Oh, okay.
that's what was preventing it being mandated before, was that they only had emergency use authorized vaccines.
Gotcha.
It wasn't until August that it became FDA approved that they decided to go forward with a mandate. Um,
Hmm.
However, I had everything, and in the FDA letter of approval to Pfizer, and this is the same to also the FDA approved Johnson and Johnson and the FDA approved Moderna. It specifically says the EUA and the FDA approved drugs are two legally distinct entities.
Oh, right. Right.
One is called, so like in terms of like Pfizer, one is called Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine, and the
Hmm.
other one, the FDA approved one, is called Pfizer BioNTech Comirnaty vaccine.
Oh, okay. So yeah, real shell game there.
Yeah. And also, if you look on the FDA white papers, where you can look up all the NDCs for every single drug and stuff like that, if you try
Hmm.
looking up the NDCs available for the Comirnaty vaccine, there's none in existence. There's not no
Oh,
one. No one has ever been given an FDA approved Pfizer vaccine.
what? What's it? You said NDC.
Yeah,
What's that? Hmm.
that is like the drug code assigned to it.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Huh. Real. That's crazy. So there's. You're saying that there's an FDA approved version, so it can be required. But what was given is the non approved version.
Right.
Good
Or what they
grief.
wanted. Well, they were saying that we had to get it because it was FDA approved. So this goes into, come
Gotcha.
this October drill, they removed all of the refusers from the rest of the battalion. We're doing this big battalion field ops, which
Right.
was also pretty sketchy that they were trying to do this big vaccine clinic in the field, um, away from people's phones, right? No one had service or anything like that. No one could look up things like last minute questions or objections or
Oh,
anything like that.
right.
Uh, and so those of us who said no, they removed us from the field and brought us to a separate location. Um, they made
Oh, so
us
not only
watch.
no phones, but no moral support either.
Right.
Like, oh wow, crazy dude.
Yeah. Um, and then they made us watch this like 2 minute long cartoon CDC, almost like propaganda video. And they were like, you have to watch this video to make sure that you're properly informed on the benefits of this vaccine. And it was
Right.
like, there was no statistics given, there was no data given,
Sure.
there was not a single number given in this entire video. It's like, mRNA drugs are good for the future. You should get it. Stuff like that.
Right. Right. I
Um,
watched Looney Tunes growing up too, but I'm not running
yeah.
around, trying to thinking cats and mice chase each other all the time or whatever.
So it was almost like an insult to our intelligence. We're like, really?
Right. Right.
This, and then they came out again. Like, if you refuse this, this is what's going to happen to you. And we still said no. I mean, we got this far, and then the next step was we needed to have an interview with the chaplain.
Oh,
Because
you guys?
yeah, those of us who refused needed to have an interview with the chaplain.
Okay. What? Huh? Why the chaplain? I'm interrupting. You'll probably get to that.
Yeah. So they want to interrogate like if you any kind of like philosophical or ethical or religious rejections to the
Oh, okay.
vaccine.
Sure.
And when I mean interrogate, I mean like interrogate because like he was asking all sorts of questions. So like um, when I went into the interview with the chaplain, I specifically said, "Look, my refusal on this vaccine is not based off of my religion at all. It's
Mm.
not." And so the chaplain goes, "If you don't mind me asking, what religious denomination do you associate with?" And I told him I associate with Catholic. And he immediately goes, "The Pope has said that it's okay to take this vaccine."
Yeah, just disregard my first sentence in the room.
It was literally the first thing I said. I was like, "Just so you know."
Right.
Um, yeah, so, I mean, it was an interrogation. And then after that, we had to go have a interview with the medical provider, the Army medical doctor who was available for us.
Mm.
Talk to him about like the medical consequences of the vaccine and whatever. And obviously, I come in with all this information in this document with this is what they say. I think what you're telling me is bullshit,
Right.
or well, yeah, bullshit. It's not based on any science, right? Because there is no science. There is no studies done. They
Sure.
have
Sure.
nothing done
Sure.
on this thing. And I brought up the whole difference between the Comirnaty and the EUA and the FDA approved vaccines, and he was like, "I have never heard of that." I was like, "You are the doctor, and you've never heard of this? That's scary."
Right.
And
Right.
I was like, "Okay, well now you have heard of it. Here's the document from FDA letter of approval to Pfizer that says this. So now you can't say that you haven't heard of it." And he actually said the same thing to the next person after me, said that he never heard of it, even though I just told him that.
And the next guy had the same paperwork and everything as you
I
had.
print, I made copies, yeah.
Right. 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 So, wow. Did
And
he not anticipate that you knew this other guy, or what was?
obviously, we all knew each other because we're all in the same building together, and we were
Right.
all like in like this like huddle, waiting for our turn to go interview with the chaplain and the medical provider and stuff. So
Right.
this was a 4-day drill that this was going on, and so we were moved on day one, and
Right.
we were there. So on Thursday we were moved, and we were at this separate site. So it was so everyone was out in the field, and we were at the closest armory, um, and we didn't get released from this site until Sunday, because Sunday was the
Wow.
vaccine day where they were going to do the clinic at the field operation.
Right. Right.
And yeah, so I mean, we're all waiting our turn to interview with the chaplain and the medical provider, and we were all together. And yeah, the other thing too was I was like, you know, Doc, I as a sergeant, right, is my obligation to make sure that my soldiers are properly informed, right?
Sure. Sure.
If I on Sunday when you have this vaccine clinic, and if I am I allowed to check the labels on these vaccines, right? And if it is not the FDA approved, can I tell my soldiers, right?
Right. Right.
And he kept going. He's like, "I don't think that matters. I don't think there's a difference." Like, I was like, "That's not answering my question, sir. Right? What is it? Can I give my soldiers transparency? Is that allowed?" And
Right.
eventually, he was like, "Yeah, sure, you can do that."
Huh.
And so, come Sunday, I went and checked out the vaccines. The vaccine said it was the emergency use authorized drug, but the fact sheet that they had in front of everybody was the Comirnaty. That's the FDA approved one.
Oh, really?
So he was switching up the vaccines that they were giving and the fact sheet that said what you were getting.
Wild.
Um, so I started making a scene about it. and then I
Right.
was ordered
It'd
to
be
be
like if
removed.
somebody said was changing your car oil and was putting in, standard, but the paperwork said it was synthetic.
Yeah,
That's
except a
just
little
that's
bit more
crazy.
personal and possibly more permanent.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
kidding. No kidding.
um,
Wow.
yeah, so we were, me and a couple other sergeants were like, whoa, like we need to put a halt to this clinic. And then we were like, removed from it. We got yelled at. We're like, how dare you interrupt an active medical clinic? Like, how dare you question the captain? You're just a sergeant. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about, right? You're
Right.
not a doctor. Um, someone said, you don't know shit. All you know how to do is Google, right?
Okay. Very
Yeah.
cool. Just answer the question. Maybe I did just Google it, but still.
Yeah, why are these two things different? What's
Right.
going on?
Right.
Um, yeah. Earlier that morning too, before the clinic started, um, I had one of my female soldiers come up to me and another sergeant because we had all the documents and everything. Right? She was asking questions about pregnancy, right? How the vaccine might affect pregnancy.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
We're like, don't take our word for it. This is what Pfizer says about this, right?
Mm.
Which was not good stuff.
Right. Even then.
Even then,
Yeah.
um, and so she was like, "Okay, I'm going to go get a second opinion from the army doctor, the one that was lying to everybody." Um, and so when she went to the doctor, and we got removed from the site, me and the other sergeants were like being accused of sexual harassment for talking to this female soldier. And we're like, first off, she approached us, and all we
Right.
did was provide her the information to make an informed decision. If
Right.
you like, why don't you go talk to her? Was that sexual harassment or whatever? And they were like, well, we don't need to get into the details of that.
That's kind of your whole
Yeah,
case is the
right.
details.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, and so then me and the other sergeants who were essentially given like gag orders, we can talk about COVID while in uniform.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah.
But those who do toe the line can.
Right.
Right. Right.
Um,
Good grief, man.
Yeah, so I mean, just saying no, I was also barred from re-enlistment. Um, so I couldn't re-enlist even if I wanted to.
Sure.
But also, they couldn't kick me out because my whole argument was that they didn't have a lawful order to kick me out on because they
Right.
didn't have the FDA approved vaccine.
Right.
I said in all my counseling statements, I was like, this is not a lawful order. You can't do anything to me until you show me the FDA approved drug.
Sure. Yeah.
Which between October 2021, when they mandated it for everyone to get, and by the time I got out, June 5th, right, 2022, they never provided that information.
Sure.
And our fight back in October made sure that no one in the New Hampshire Guard got kicked out for saying no.
Oh. Okay. Sure.
Unfortunately, that's not the case for other states or other units, but
Mm-hmm.
we were able to do what we can here in New Hampshire, and no one got kicked out on the basis of saying no.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
then Representative Thomas Massey from Kentucky, he snuck it into the new defense authorization bill that no one could get a dishonorable discharge for saying no. So
Oh.
that
Okay.
also
Sure.
helped. Yeah.
Huh.
And then, I just ended up getting out. When I got out, couldn't re-enlist even if I wanted to. Although, I think it was like a month or two ago, they dropped the vaccine mandate, and I've been getting calls to come back ever since.
That. Yeah. So how did that affect you? When you went through the whole process, all the stress and everything, and made the decision to get out, and then within a year they're like, "Oh, actually, uh, that's not the case anymore. Come on back." Like, what was the effect on you?
Well, I'm essentially turned off to the whole military at this point, right?
Mm.
Um,
Sure.
this is, something that I always said, right? Whenever I show up to drill, I'm like, it's my favorite, like, especially after this whole thing in October. And I just became the enemy of the, the higher ranking structure in the military. I was like, hey, it's my favorite people that I hate seeing because I know like this drill is going to turn out to be a shit show because I'm going to have to go see this person to go talk about this issue with the vaccine or like try and persuade me into taking it again or whatever.
Right. Right.
Um, getting removed from a truck, right? I got removed from being a crew chief.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I got sent. I got so I got sent to a different unit that was an hour away. So I was probably like 45 minutes to my the one that I had been with for
Hmm.
at that point 5.5 years,
Yeah.
and then they're like, go to this other unit for your last 6 months.
Good grief. That just.
Yeah. Yeah. So when they call me, I'm pretty salty about it. Um, when I got out, I told my retention NCO. He was like, what can we do to make sure you stay? Obviously, you have to get the vaccine, but like, what else? What else can we do to make you stay? I was like, at this point, give me $1 billion and a reenlistment ceremony on the moon, and I'll do it.
Wow. Huh. That's tough. I mean, it's honorable. It's cool to make that stand, but it's still it's a hit. It's just like, well, good grief. Like,
Yeah,
come on, guys.
yeah. It's quite the roller coaster because it's like this thing that I loved, right? I loved being a part of the military. I thought we
Sure.
had like a true and honorable mission, right? Doing the right thing, right? This
Hmm.
was like you're of the best of the best, right? Not just in performance, but also like your duty, your honor, your integrity, right? If you're in the
Sure.
military, you're the best of the best.
Right.
And then it was just like this like decline into okay, maybe it's not what I thought it was,
Hmm. Yeah.
or maybe it was this thing, and now it just certainly isn't anymore.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It'd be tough to kind of, I don't know the right analogy. See the other side of the curtain, the man on the other side of the curtain, or whatever that is. But
Yeah, Wizard of
huh.
Oz, yeah, the man
Yeah.
behind the curtain, yeah.
Behind the curtain. There we go. Huh. Yeah. Well, that I'm as is often the case. I'm sure I can guess your answer, but I do like to ask everybody if a young kid was to ask you for your advice, say I'm planning on joining the military. What advice do you have for me? What would you say?
Don't do it, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
I cannot recommend joining the military at all. I don't regret my experience whatsoever. I
Hmm.
mean, it's made me who I am today, and
Sure.
it's made me more informed and more knowledgeable today. Right, being behind the scenes, and then also having to come to the reality of like, what am I doing? What could I potentially do? And is that a good thing? Um,
Hmm.
is an experience I would never give up, but I can't say I would want anyone to be put into a situation where, like, let's just say they didn't make that realization or something like that, or they did deploy
Hmm.
and they were in a high Mars and they had to push that button to launch a rocket at something that they don't know what it is.
Right. Right.
Um,
And then
I know
find out
I
later.
know I couldn't live with myself. I know
Yeah.
if I had gone on a combat deployment and then later learned about Daniel Hale and the whole situation with the 90% drone strikes being on innocent civilians, like I would not
Hmm.
be in a good place at all.
Yeah.
Uh, and I know a lot of people that unfortunately have gone through that experience and have a lot of trauma that they have to deal with.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, It almost seems like the not knowing, like the uncertainty, would be worse than knowing.
Right.
Like if you knew, oh, this fire mission went awry and caused this, that'd be tough. But if you're just like, well, I have no clue. We had 5 successful fire missions, and I don't know, like just the uncertainty, I think would be even worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I am thankful to be in New Hampshire, where I am. The place that I am actually has a lot of people who think the way that I do. Uh, uh,
Sure.
in New Hampshire, we have what's called the Free State Project,
Mm-hmm.
which is a movement to get a bunch of libertarians to move to New Hampshire to try and make it more, or libertarian-minded people, right, to make it more, less government, less taxes, try and like come back to what America used to be.
Sure. Sure.
And there's a lot of veterans in this movement, a lot of people who have gone through the experiences and have come to the realization that like maybe the missions that we had in the Middle East were not what we were told that they were.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, this is a vast network of people around me with similar experiences and going through the same things. Not just the military too. People who, again, lost their jobs because of the military, the vaccines,
Mm-hmm.
who refused it and stood up to it. They're here. A lot of people, especially after 2021, 2022, with the whole vaccine stuff, there was a huge influx of Liberty movers to New Hampshire to become part of this project because
Oh,
you know
yeah.
they were just losing their jobs in like California or New York or wherever they were coming from, and they wanted something better, better lives for themselves and for their
Hmm.
families.
And that was just and that makes sense. Like, if your job is a big part of your life, that's a
Yeah,
big thing that keeps you in one area. So if someone lost that
yeah,
and they're already leaning that way, I could see them being like,
yeah,
all right, well, back up.
yeah. They don't call it making a living for nothing. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right. Huh. Yeah, that's crazy. That's interesting. So did that community, um, like, in the lead up to the whole vaccine thing, I'm sure that had an effect on you, and help,
yeah,
just like help support you and stuff.
yeah. It helped me make sure that I made the right decision for myself. Because I'm sure, like some of these old, like I said, we were like 20 strong when they first said everyone's getting it, and they brought down to 6. Right?
Hmm.
It's a
Right.
really tough like thing to face, right? Dishonorable discharge, having to pay all this money back, but
Oh
having a
yeah.
community, an entire community, right? Thousands and thousands of people to back you up,
Sure.
right? And say, like, don't worry about what they say, right? Don't worry about what the consequences, what happens, right? We got your back, right?
Yeah.
Plenty of business owners, right? That in New Hampshire that are free staters, right? And they're like, hey, you know, if you get dishonorable discharge and you're having a hard time finding a job, I can help you out, right? All sorts of different support groups, stuff like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
So just having a massive community that's like, no matter what happens, you make what's the best decision for you, and we're going to support you.
Hmm. Yeah. That's
And
pretty cool.
that's something like that doesn't happen in America anymore. Like you used to, like everyone used to know your neighborhood, right? And now no one even knows their neighbors.
Hmm. Yeah.
And this is like such a weird experience being a part of this massive community where like this is a statewide thing with thousands and thousands of people, and just everyone kind of knows each other and everyone's got their back, and like we're all part of this mission, right? To the mission of the Free State Project is liberty in your lifetime, right? So
Hmm.
it's like
Yeah.
everyone's got this mission to try and reduce the size of government, kind of let us breathe a little bit more. Um, and yeah, it is a hopeful experience.
Hmm.
Um, Definitely, if someone is like listening to this and is like kind of feeling alone out there and has like these like ideas of being part of like a more liberty oriented place, like definitely I would recommend visit New Hampshire because it's like kind of crazy. A lot of people will visit here and they're like, why didn't I move here sooner? Like people like
Hmm.
move to like thinking like moving like Florida or like Texas for like more freedom or something like that.
Right.
and then they move, and then they visit New Hampshire. Like, oh my god, this is a totally different experience. This is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. I mean, it might be cold, but there's a lot to be said for, like you
Yeah,
said, the community.
yeah,
Uh, it's easy in this digital age. It's easy to overlook that, the
yeah,
value of a guy knowing your next door neighbor.
yeah. And that's what's brought me to what I've made into like my big project here in New Hampshire, and that is the Defend the Guard Act.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so Defend the Guard would be passed at like a state level, and would make sure that the state's National Guard couldn't be deployed to overseas combat unless Congress formally declares war, as stated in Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which
Like
hasn't
basic
happened
stuff.
since World War II. Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah. The minimum standard set right for going to war with another country, right? You have to do this in order to go to war with another country. We haven't done
Sure.
in over 80 years.
Yeah, and this the whole concept is that the state's not saying to the federal government, you can't send the army. They're just saying, look, these are our dudes, and we pay for them, and they're our citizens, And if you want access to them, here's the legal steps you need to take. I mean,
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like a
yeah,
novel concept. It seems like,
right.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I can
it,
understand why the federal government would be like, well, getting all shirty about it, but
yeah,
it seems pretty logical.
yeah. It seems logical. Seems reasonable. It's like,
Hmm.
all right, these are the rules outlined in the law of the land, our governing document on
Right,
how to conduct war. Doesn't say that you can't do it. It says this is a process, and there is a reason for this process, is because the executive branch, the controller of the military, has the most reason to go to war with other people because they
sure,
are the military.
sure.
So you want to take the initiation of war or the war
Mm,
powers away from those who are going to do the war and bring it to the civilians, right? Who are going to be most affected by the war.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
And it's supposed to be by Congress, so it's Congress moves very slowly. I think we all know this. So it is supposed to be a very
Hopefully.
yeah, it's supposed to be a very well thought out process that you don't go headlong, face first into some conflict that you don't fully understand, like
Right.
perhaps Iraq or Afghanistan,
Sure.
and you take a step back, analyze everything, what's going on, allow evidence to surface, maybe that there were no WMDs in a certain country, um, and then
Hmm.
decide what is the course of action for the nation to take.
Right.
And if the war becomes unpopular with the people, then you sign your name to that piece of paper that says, I declare, United States Declaration of War signed by these representatives.
Right.
Now
Right.
you are beholden to that document and beholden to your constituents.
Right.
So there was an absolute reason why it was laid out this way. It wasn't to be annoying or something like that. It was to try and control the powers that are most invested in war,
Hmm.
to make sure that we do it in a responsible manner and that we don't go do some global adventurism. We kind of be the republic that we're meant to be.
Right. Right. And the argument could be made that you're only affecting the National Guard. Like the Army still exists. If for some reason the need arises, there's still a very large body that could be used as it has been in the past. Like
Exactly.
you don't
Yeah.
even you don't even have to declare war. You can do whatever you want. We're just talking about the people that we're responsible for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the guy that started
Huh.
this, Dan McKnight, he was a sergeant in the Idaho National Guard, and
Okay.
he kind of had this like moment that made him thinking about like the National Guard's purpose and what was going on with the wars during Katrina, because he had to lead
Oh.
a convoy of Idaho National Guard engineers all the way down to Louisiana. And when he
Oh
got there, he
wow.
was like, "Where's the Louisiana National Guard? Why aren't they helping?" Right? There's all these different state National Guards, but there's no Louisiana National Guard. It turns out the
Oh.
Louisiana National Guard was deployed to Iraq.
Gotcha.
So their own state's National Guard was unavailable to help them in Louisiana when they
Right,
had this massive catastrophe.
right, and tons of factors like the locals know the area better. They're more motivated to help because they're locals, and for Idaho, for example, that's a long ways from Louisiana. That's a lot
Yeah.
of fuel to get there.
Oh yeah.
And in every aspect, it just seems better um, to utilize locals. Like
Yeah.
it's all disadvantages.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, like, and that's not the only time that's happened. I mean, in California, a lot of the time, the California National Guard, which has aviation units, right, the Black Hawk helicopters, which can assist with forest fires,
Mm-hmm.
they're not in California. They're in Afghanistan or Iraq or
Right.
Jordan.
Right. Huh. Yeah. The when the backup resources are being utilized as if they're the primaries or close to, then they're not going to be available for their primary goal
Exactly.
of local help and reinforcement. Huh.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But you say
So
it was passed in New Hampshire, or you're working on it?
we're working on it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Getting a lot of pushback from the Pentagon, um, Department of Defense.
Sure.
So we had our committee hearing in the state house, and it was actually last year when I wasn't on board with I wasn't in charge of the Defend the Guard Act initiative in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was actually probably New Hampshire was probably the least performing state in the country in terms of trying to get this thing passed. The
Mm.
state representative, who was the primary sponsor for this thing, didn't know what it was. He didn't know what he was talking about during the committee hearing. He was the only one who showed up, and the Pentagon, they sent two suits to go testify against this thing.
Right. And they had a full title. They were important people.
Yeah. So I took over the role as the lead organizer for the state of New Hampshire for this thing, and we got, I think, like 25 people to show up, mostly veterans. I think there was only 2 people who were not veterans who showed up to
Sure.
testify for this bill. I was the one who got all of our sponsors and co-sponsors together for this bill.
Mm-hmm.
So all the state representative sponsors and co-sponsors were all veterans too. I made sure they were all well knowledgeable on the subject.
Sure.
It was I got a call from the national organization that New Hampshire was the best performing state to ever present this bill to a state house.
Wow. Awesome.
So yeah, night and day difference between last year and this year. And the two suits, the same 2 guys, they gave verbatim the same testimony that they gave last year. And of
Right.
course, I watched last year's testimony, so I knew what they were going to say. And we essentially, the first guy would go up, he would say all these things, and then I would prepare the next few guys to go up and be like, say what you're going to say, but make sure you refute this, this, and this from what this
Sure.
guy said.
Sure. Work this into your comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and then the next suit from DC would go up, and he would say these next things, and then I'd be like, all right, we're going to destroy this, this, and this, what he said. And then the last guy to go up, I was like, make sure that you say that the only 2 people to oppose this thing are the people who are paid to oppose it.
Oh yeah, yeah. And are not from New Hampshire.
Yeah.
We're locals. Crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're uniquely positioned because not only you're a veteran and you're involved in the Free State Project, but also you're a local. You're not a mover. So the
Right.
locals probably look on you with a little more favor. You're like, no, I've been here. I grew up here. I'm born and raised, as opposed to, because I know a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, but there are some people that look down on the movers as like, well, you're just carpetbaggers or, whatever.
Yeah.
So
that is definitely a factor. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got that kind of in where you're like, no, I'm a New Hampshire fella. Like I've been around.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's still being heard by the House. Hopefully, we get some
Mm.
news on that soon. I know it actually passed in committee in Arizona, so that's a good sign.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Montana's up next for states to testify on this thing, and then hopefully get it through committee.
Gotcha. Okay. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. By the time this comes out, it may be may have moved. The facts may not be current,
Right?
but no
Yeah.
worries. So if someone's interested, they can go look it up for themselves and figure out what's going on.
Yeah. And you know,
Get an
in the
update.
meantime, this gives me more time to pull some more resources that we have. I'm currently working with the New Hampshire ACLU for them to endorse this thing.
Mm.
So that'll, ACLU, even though is supposed to be nonpartisan, tends to lean left.
Sure.
And this has become a very powerful, progressive institution. So getting them on board is going to make sure that Democrats in the state house are not going to
Sure.
feel comfortable opposing this. I mean, they're going to kind of have to. And
Sure.
then I'm currently um, talking to some post commanders for VFWs and American Legions here in New Hampshire. Get them to
Oh,
endorse this.
right.
Um, the American Legion in Maine, one of them in Maine has endorsed this, and then a VFW in Kentucky has endorsed this. So it's not going to be impossible to get endorsements.
Sure. Sure.
That's another powerful institution. Like, what kind of Republican wants to be the one who goes against what the American Legion says?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, that's a good. Yeah. Get aspects of both sides committed, and then
yeah,
and then use those to talk to their own people, kind of thing.
yeah. I
Yeah.
got New Hampshire Peace Action, which is a progressive organization, but they're a very large institution in New Hampshire for ending wars and stuff like that. And I reached out to them. Their executive director, Will Hopkins, he was actually in New Hampshire Army National Guard as well,
Mm.
and
Okay.
he got his organization to support it, and he actually came out to testify as well. Which is great too, because he came at it from a totally different perspective than we were coming at it, because we kept hammering home the constitutionality of it,
Right. Right.
right? The War Powers Measure, Article 1, Section 8,
Right.
and then he comes out of nowhere and he's like, Article 6 of the United States Constitution, that we have to abide by international treaties. The United States has signed UN resolutions
Oh,
banning invasions and wars against other countries.
sure.
So the reason why we're not calling these wars is because we're trying to scoot around international treaties, which, is not how we're supposed to navigate the Constitution. That's a violation of
Right.
Article 6.
Right. Huh.
Uh,
Yeah. So
so
that'd be really
I didn't even,
useful.
yeah, I didn't even think of that. I didn't even think of Article 6. I was like, War Powers Measure, right?
Right. Huh. Like the old 1-2 punch. Hopefully.
That's almost like it was. I mean, we
Yeah.
kept coming at it from this one angle, and then he comes out of nowhere with this Article 6 angle.
Hmm.
It was honestly, it was beautiful.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. Huh. Well, we've been rolling. Whew. Any last thoughts or points or anything to mention?
Um, Not really. I think we covered a whole lot.
Yeah.
A lot of different stuff. I guess the only thing I could say is like check out the Free State Project, because we got some great stuff going on here.
Thank you for listening to this episode of How I Embraced the Suck. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend. And as my Girl Scout den mother used to say, stay frosty.
I want to make sure that's correct.